So this time you've sent over some sources that are all kind of leading us towards ancient Greece,
Yeah.
but specifically looking at it through the eyes of children,
Uh-huh.
which is a really neat angle, I think,
This is.
to approach this. And to get started, we're going to actually take a little bit of a roundabout route
Okay.
by looking at kind of the broader picture first.
Right. You included a book called How We Lived in Ancient Times by Ben Hubbard.
Yes.
And this book, I mean, it doesn't solely focus on Greece, but it's a fantastic foundation for understanding the ancient world in general by exploring the daily lives of children in various cultures.
Right.
And it's written at a grade 6 reading level, so it's incredibly accessible.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's kind of unpack that a little bit.
Okay.
The goal here with this deep dive is to use Hubbard's book as kind of our initial stepping stone to pull out some key insights about what everyday life looked like for kids in ancient times across these different societies. And then use that broader context to shed light on what it might have been like to be a child in ancient Greece.
Absolutely.
So think of it as like we're building this
Yeah.
comparative framework.
A framework. Yeah. And Hubbard's book is great because it has this really engaging approach where each section basically drops you into a different ancient culture through the eyes of a child.
Oh, wow.
So you get these glimpses, these sort of vignettes of life. So, a child in ancient Egypt with the pyramids, as a constant backdrop, or kids in Viking villages.
Wow.
Where warriors and longboats would have been everyday sights. Or even a peek into a Japanese palace.
Whoa,
and, children learning to ride horses on the vast plains of Scythia.
Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah, so it's this real mix.
It really paints such a diverse picture of the ancient world.
Yes.
Right from the start. So as we're going through this, I want you to kind of think about this question. Even though ancient Greece isn't explicitly mentioned in that initial list that Hubbard covers,
Okay.
given that his focus is on ancient times, what do you think we might expect to learn about children in that society based on maybe like some common threads or even some surprising differences in the lives of children across those cultures that he does?
That's a fascinating question to keep in mind as we go through this. And I think what's really insightful about Hubbard's approach is that he focuses on the fundamental aspects of daily life.
Okay.
So for each of these cultures that he features, he delves into things like the clothes the children wore.
Right.
Which would have been vastly different depending on the climate and available materials. Then there's food, again, heavily influenced by geography and agriculture.
Of course.
Like, for instance, Hubbard highlights that in ancient Egypt, bread and beer were staples even for children.
Oh, really?
Which reflects the agricultural output of the Nile Valley.
Wow, that's so different from what, I'm just thinking off the top of my head here.
Yeah.
Like what kids in a Viking village would have eaten. Probably like more preserved fish and
right, whatever they could hunt or gather. Exactly.
Yeah. I bet their playtime looked pretty different too.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, less screen time.
Yeah, a lot less screen time for sure.
You can be sure of that.
Yeah.
Hubbard's book likely emphasizes simpler forms of games and recreation, things that didn't require, manufactured toys or complex rules. More along the lines of storytelling, physical games, or toys made from natural materials.
Yeah.
Now, if we try to imagine this in the context of ancient Greece, given their Mediterranean climate, we might expect to see lighter, linen-based clothing. Their diet would have probably featured olives, olive oil, grains, and seafood, reflecting the local resources.
Right.
And for games, perhaps we'd see things like dice made from animal bones.
Interesting.
Or simple ball games.
What stands out to you about those potential differences?
Well, just thinking about that, it's amazing how directly tied their daily lives were to their immediate environment. Like the climate, the available food, the natural resources around them.
Right.
It dictated so much of their lives.
Yeah, it makes our modern lives feel so, abstract in comparison.
Yeah, I agree. And the sources you sent also mention Christian Engel's illustrations.
Oh, yes.
In Hubbard's book.
Yes.
And they emphasize how vital those visuals are in making these ancient worlds feel tangible.
Totally.
To us today. It's crucial, right? For bridging this vast expanse of time.
Yeah.
Engel's illustrations would help readers, especially younger ones, connect with the children of the past on a human level.
I think that's a really important point because it allows them to really visualize their homes, their activities.
Yeah, and even their emotions.
Right.
It really transforms these distant figures from just names in a history book into relatable individuals.
Right. Absolutely. And I think one thing that Hubbard's broader look likely touches on is the role that children played in contributing to their family's survival.
Yeah.
It wasn't necessarily a childhood that was focused solely on learning or play.
No, not generally. No, not generally. No, it really depended on the specific ancient culture and the family's socioeconomic status.
Okay.
But children often had responsibilities from a very young age.
Sure.
So, for instance, Hubbard highlights that in some agricultural societies, even young children were involved in tasks like scaring birds from fields or helping with the harvest. So there was this early integration into the family's economic activities.
Right.
Now, this raises an important point for us.
Okay.
When we think about ancient Greece, would those expectations have varied significantly between, say, the children of citizens in democratic Athens and the children growing up in the more militaristic society of Sparta?
Oh, that's a really good point.
Or what about the children of enslaved people?
Right.
Their daily lives and responsibilities would have been undoubtedly different.
That's a really important distinction to consider as we kind of dig into this a little bit further. Hubbard's book, in its broader scope, also emphasizes that ancient times wasn't this monolithic block of history.
Right.
Life varied enormously.
Yes, absolutely.
Depending on where you were geographically in this specific era.
Exactly. And he showcases this incredible diversity in housing.
Okay.
So everything from, caves and simple dwellings to elaborate temples and royal palaces.
Right.
And also in the wide range of occupations that people held. So you get a real sense of that variety.
Yeah, the variation within the ancient world itself provides like a really crucial lens for us to understand the nuances of ancient Greece.
I mean, we can't just talk about ancient Greece as one single entity.
Right.
Right. The experiences of a child, let's say, in a bustling port city like Corinth would have been vastly different from those of a child in a rural farming community in Arcadia.
Right.
Or, like we just mentioned, a child raised under the strict discipline of Spartan society.
Right.
So it really is about looking at the micro-histories.
It underscores how important it is to avoid generalizations.
Yes.
When we think about the past.
Totally.
I mean, it makes you realize that understanding these past differences, whether it's between like the nomadic life that Hubbard depicts in Scythia and the settled agricultural life in Egypt, or the contrasts within ancient Greece itself, really enriches our understanding of human history.
It does.
And the diverse ways that societies have organized themselves.
Absolutely.
So having built this broader framework, using Hubbard's really insightful book, your sources also directed us to some excellent resources.
Okay.
If you want to delve specifically into the world of ancient Greece. And several of these focus on one of the most, really, it's just so enduring, right?
It is.
This narrative from that civilization.
Yeah.
The story of the Trojan War.
Absolutely. Yeah. So if Hubbard's overview has kind of sparked your interest in ancient life, I think the Trojan War is a fantastic entry point into the myths and legends of Greece.
Yeah.
So we've got the Trojan War History for Kids, an ancient Greek epic of war and deception by Nora Langley.
Yes.
This one seems to cover all the major players, the heroic Achilles, the cunning Odysseus, the legendary Helen, and it's aimed at a really broad age range from 8 to 18.
Okay.
So it should offer a pretty comprehensive yet accessible account.
That's great.
Yeah. Then there's The Trojan Horse, How the Greeks Won the War by Emily Little. This book kind of zooms in on that pivotal moment of the conflict, the ingenious strategy of the Trojan horse. And this one's geared towards younger readers, around grades 2 to 4. So it's a great way to just kind of grasp that iconic episode, of the Trojan War.
Okay, so that's a good starting point.
Yeah.
For those younger readers who maybe aren't quite ready for the full, epic poem.
Right. And then there's Bernard Evsland's The Trojan War, which appears to provide a more in-depth look at the entire, 10-year saga, from the initial disputes among the goddesses to the fall of Troy through the Trojan horse. And that one's aimed at grades 4 to 6. suggesting a more detailed exploration of the narrative.
Right.
So a bit older,
Yeah.
a bit more detail.
A little more nuance there.
Exactly.
Okay.
And then, for those who are intrigued by the aftermath of the war,
Yeah.
Andrew Lang's Tales of Troy and Greece
Okay.
sounds particularly interesting. It follows the adventures of Ulysses, Odysseus,
Right.
on his long journey home after the conflict. So this one's for slightly older readers, around ages 11 and 12.
Okay.
And it delves into those famous encounters with mythical creatures in faraway lands.
So more like the Odyssey side of things.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah, and it's interesting because Ben Hubbard himself, whose book we started with, has also written The Ancient Greeks in Athens.
Yes.
So it's part of a series that seems to focus on taking readers back in time.
Okay.
So it's likely to offer a more direct look at everyday life.
Oh, fantastic.
In one of the most important Greek city-states, probably exploring its famous landmarks and cultural practices.
Cool.
And this one seems to be aimed at a primary school level.
Okay.
And then there's Hubbard's Troy, an epic tale of rage, deception, and destruction.
Oh.
Just the title itself suggests a more intense and perhaps thematically complex treatment of the Trojan War. So as your sources wisely noted, this one might be more suitable for older readers who can engage with those weightier themes.
Right.
A little more mature.
A little bit more, yeah. And to help you navigate all these options, we even have like a summary table outlining each of these books with their authors, recommended reading levels, and a brief description.
Fantastic.
So it's kind of like your personal guide to exploring ancient Greece.
Great.
Further,
love it.
Depending on what, aspects you find most compelling and your preferred reading level.
It highlights the wealth of material that's available.
It really does.
If you want to delve deeper into this incredible civilization. And it all circles back to our initial approach of gaining that broader understanding before zooming in on the specifics of Greece.
Absolutely. Now, let's kind of circle back to the author who started us on this journey, Ben Hubbard.
Okay.
From your sources, it seems like he is an incredibly prolific writer.
He is.
Over 160 books for children.
That's amazing.
Which is just an astounding number.
It is. Yeah.
I mean, his subjects are so diverse, right? Everything from historical topics like Vikings and gladiators to even contemporary themes like pop music and airplanes.
Yeah, that's a really wide range, isn't it?
It really is.
It speaks to, a remarkably curious and adaptable intellect.
It really does.
And, his books have been translated into more than 12 languages, which underscores their universal appeal and the fact that they connect with young readers across so many different cultures.
Yeah. Now, it's also really fascinating to learn about his background. Before he became this full-time author. He currently resides in British Columbia, Canada. But he had a really interesting career in journalism.
Oh, cool.
Beforehand. He started in New Zealand interviewing artists.
Oh, wow.
Then moved to England as a magazine and book editor.
And then even spent time as a reporter in the Middle East.
Wow.
For the New York Times.
That's fascinating.
It is.
I think that journalistic foundation is really telling.
Yeah.
It kind of implies a strong basis in research,
Right.
commitment to factual accuracy.
Right.
And a knack for crafting engaging narratives based on real information.
And that totally translates into writing compelling and informative books.
Totally.
For children.
He's bringing that reporter's eye for detail.
Yeah.
And that storyteller's ability to the past.
Right.
Which is so cool.
Okay, let's synthesize all of this.
Okay.
The core takeaway, I think, here is that Ben Hubbard's How We Live in Ancient Times provides us with this wonderfully accessible and engaging entry point into understanding the daily lives of children in like a variety of ancient cultures. And while it doesn't focus solely on Greece, it lays this really valuable groundwork.
Absolutely.
Offering this comparative perspective that I think helps us when we turn our attention specifically to Greece.
Totally, yeah. I mean, it helps us appreciate that ancient Greece existed within this larger tapestry of ancient societies with its own unique characteristics, but also these potential similarities and differences in the fundamental experiences of childhood.
And we've got all these, really great potential avenues
to
explore ancient Greece further, particularly the Trojan War.
which is so captivating.
Absolutely. I mean, so for you, our listener, who wanted to understand ancient Greece through the lens of children's lives, we've kind of established this broader context.
Yeah.
And now you have a whole list of potential avenues for further exploration.
Right. So this leads us to a really thought-provoking question to leave you with.
Okay.
Considering the often stark differences in how children lived in the ancient world compared to today.
Right.
What specific aspects of their daily lives, whether it was their work, their play, or their roles within their families, might surprise us the most? And, maybe even more profoundly, what can those differences and maybe even some unexpected similarities reveal to us about, the enduring essence of childhood?
Oh, that's such a good question.
That has transcended millennia.
Yeah.
It's something to ponder.
It is.